it rich that The View is saying she got the job based on looks when DEI is all about based on looks?
For weeks, The View treated Karoline Leavitt's massive $800 million lawsuit like it was some kind of bad joke. They mocked it on air, brushed it off like dust on their shoulders, and acted like it was just another attention grab from the right. But now, those same loud voices are suddenly way quieter, and sources say the hosts are begging her to drop the case before things get even messier. So how did it all spiral so fast? And what's really coming next for ABC and the women of The View? At first, the vibe on set was cocky, straight up smug. The hosts weren't just unbothered, they were laughing. Joy Behar, never one to back down from taking shots, rolled her eyes like usual and called it just another conservative playing the victim.
For me, and sort of lived lives of dreams deferred and poured everything in me, and just my life, how I transitioned from college. I went to college when I was 16, high school when I was 12, the struggle of that, and my career as a federal prosecutor, and then how I found my way and found
classic Joy. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg, no stranger to controversy herself, brushed it off like it was just another headline. Please, she said, we've dealt with worse. This'll be forgotten in a week. That line aged real fast. And then there was Sunny Hostin, the show's go-to legal mind, who spoke with total confidence. She looked straight into the camera and said this lawsuit had no chance. This lawsuit has no legs to stand on, she claimed. It'll be dismissed immediately. No doubt, no hesitation. For a hot second, it looked like they were right. Big-name outlets like CNN and MSNBC jumped in to back them up, calling the case baseless, frivolous, and a joke. Legal analysts lined up to echo the same talking points, that Karoline was just trying to intimidate the media and restrict free speech. Everything seemed to be working in The View's favor. But behind the scenes, a totally different story was starting to unfold. Whispers started flying in legal circles. Rumors that the case wasn't just real, it might actually stick. Karoline's legal team came out swinging, with insider claims that the lawsuit includes explosive evidence, sealed testimonies, and major defamation claims that could shake ABC's legal department to the core. That's when the tone really started to shift. Suddenly, the same hosts who were laughing just weeks ago are being way more careful with their words. There's been a noticeable change in energy on the show. Less sass, more stress. Even Whoopi, who usually shrugs everything off, has been suspiciously quiet about the whole thing lately. And now the question on everyone's mind, if this lawsuit gains real traction, could it take down daytime TV's most controversial table talkers? Because $800 million, that's not just a headline. That's enough to make even the loudest mouths on TV start watching what they say. But behind the bright lights and fake laughs, ABC's legal team wasn't cracking any jokes.
They really don't like this woman. She's a good communicator. And so Joy Behar just offered her analysis on why Leavitt was picked for the role.
While The View's hosts kept clowning around on camera, the network's legal department knew the truth. This lawsuit was no publicity stunt. It was a legal time bomb, and the clock was already ticking. Internally, panic was setting in. The lawyers weren't just concerned, they were alarmed. Sources say they immediately recognized that Karoline Leavitt's $800 million defamation case wasn't built on thin air. It had teeth, real documents, real witnesses, real stakes. And if this thing ever saw a courtroom, it could blow the roof off ABC's entire operation. While the ladies at The View kept tossing sarcastic comments like confetti, the vibe behind closed doors was anything but playful. One insider close to the network said, "They're not laughing in the legal department, there's real weight to this." According to internal leaks, the legal team was working overtime, combing through emails, transcripts, and production notes, trying to figure out just how bad the damage could be. ABC finally broke its silence with a bland public statement. "We take all legal matters with the utmost seriousness and are committed to addressing them in a thorough and professional manner." But behind that carefully worded press release, full-blown crisis mode had already kicked in. This wasn't just about defamation. The lawsuit pointed to documented misconduct, patterns of malicious commentary, and what Leavitt's legal team claimed were coordinated attacks meant to ruin reputations. If this case made it to trial, it wouldn't just be a courtroom drama. It would be a public autopsy of how daytime TV operates behind the scenes. scenes. Executives at ABC found themselves split into two camps, and neither option looked good. One side wanted to go full throttle, take it to court, and prove The View did nothing wrong, but the other side, way more nervous. They pushed for a quiet settlement, warning that a trial could force the release of private emails, backroom decisions, off-the-record conversations, stuff that could destroy careers and stain ABC's image for good. And the worst part? The View's host had no idea how serious it had gotten. They were still joking, still rolling their eyes, still underestimating just how deep this mess was getting. While they laughed under the spotlight, their bosses were putting out fires behind the curtain. This wasn't just about one lawsuit, it was about what might come next if all those secrets spilled out in front of the world. They still think it's a joke, one high-level executive whispered behind closed doors, but we're already making moves behind their backs. That's right, while the women of The View were busy laughing on set, the boardrooms at ABC were buzzing with private meetings, legal briefings, and cold, hard calculations. Network execs had already started running numbers and sketching out quiet settlement plans. The goal? Avoid a public courtroom disaster. But when word of this hit the dressing rooms of The View, all hell broke loose. The moment the host caught wind that ABC was actually considering negotiating with Karoline Leavitt, the same woman they'd mocked for weeks, the energy shifted from smug to stunned. Whoopi Goldberg, the queen bee of the panel and the show's longtime face, absolutely lost it. She'd spent weeks brushing off the lawsuit like it was beneath her, and now her own network was thinking about cutting a check to make Karoline go away. In a private meeting that turned into a screaming match, Whoopi exploded. "Are you kidding me? We're actually taking her seriously now?" she yelled, slamming her hand on the table, according to one insider. For Whoopi, this wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore. It was personal. She'd survived cancel calls, online backlash, controversial takes, and even internal drama. She was supposed to be untouchable, and suddenly ABC was bending the knee. She felt betrayed, flat out blindsided by the very company she helped carry for decades. Meanwhile, Joy Behar was on her own warpath. She stormed into the dressing room like a hurricane, threw her makeup bag onto the vanity, and yelled, "We built this damn show. We made this network millions." Her voice echoed down the hallway. She wasn't just mad, she was furious. Furious that the network was ready to fold. Furious that their loyalty was being questioned. And especially furious that Karoline Leavitt, someone she saw as irrelevant, now had the power to shake their empire. Joy wasn't going down quietly. She made that crystal clear. "Over some stupid lawsuit?" she barked. "They're just gonna toss us aside like we're replaceable?" Then there was Sunny Hostin, the usual voice of reason, but even she wasn't calm this time. As a former federal prosecutor, Sunny had read the fine print. She saw the depositions, the emails, the leaked internal clips, and she wasn't smiling. Not today. She pulled aside one of the producers and said bluntly, "This isn't just noise. If this goes to trial, we're all getting dragged into it, one way or another." Sunny knew the courtroom wasn't just a legal risk, it was a PR bloodbath waiting to happen. Everything was on the table. Past statements, off-air conversations, editing decisions, even backstage footage could be subpoenaed. She understood better than anyone how messy it could get, and she wasn't wrong. Each host was spiraling in their own way. Tempers were high, trust was low. The once bulletproof team was starting to splinter under the weight of the lawsuit none of them took seriously. Until now. And the worst part, ABC still hadn't made a final decision. The network was playing both sides, buying time, weighing outcomes, calculating how much truth the public could handle if things really blew up. Everything they had ever said about Karoline, on air, off camera, in meetings, in texts, could now be used against them. And Sunny, she was the first to truly grasp how deep this went. This wasn't just a legal issue anymore. It was about legacy, public image, and reputation. One wrong move, one resurfaced clip, and everything they'd built could come crashing down in front of millions. The fear was sinking in fast. Then it happened, the moment nobody expected. With panic tightening its grip on the set, The View did something almost unthinkable. They flipped the script live right in front of their audience. Gone was the cocky, dismissive energy. Gone were the jokes, the eye rolls, the confidence. What viewers saw instead, a public plea, masked as a conversation, but everyone could feel the shift. It was desperation in disguise. Whoopi, usually the boldest in the bunch, kicked off the segment with an uncomfortable sigh and a head shake. Her voice, normally sharp, was noticeably softer. "Look," she said slowly, "I think we all just need to take a step back here. There's been a lot of unnecessary hostility, and frankly, this isn't good for anyone. Gone was the snark, gone was the smirk. This was Whoopi trying to walk back weeks of mockery without actually admitting it. She was clearly trying to clean up the mess without getting her hands dirtier, but the damage had already been done. Then came Joy. Just weeks earlier, she was rolling her eyes and calling the lawsuit a clown act, but now her tone had flipped completely. "I don't know why this has to go so far," she said, nervously fidgeting with her notes. "Can't we just sit down like adults and talk this out?" That statement hit like a slap to loyal viewers who remembered her roasting Karoline for even daring to challenge them. Joy had gone from "this is ridiculous" to "please let's talk" in less than a month, and the shift was impossible to ignore. But it was Sunny who looked the most shaken. The legal analyst, the prosecutor, the one who confidently said the lawsuit had no legs to stand on. Now, she was leaning forward in her chair, her voice soft, measured, almost pleading. "Karoline, if you're watching," she began, carefully choosing every word, "I think there's a way we can resolve this without dragging it through the courts. Maybe it's time we all come together and find some common ground." You could practically hear the producers holding their breath behind the cameras. This wasn't just damage control, it was a white flag. One by one, the hosts tried to reframe their narrative, but the audience wasn't buying it, not entirely. It was one of the biggest public backtracks in recent television history, a complete reversal from mockery to mercy, and all of it was playing out live on national TV. They weren't just worried about losing a case anymore, they were terrified of losing everything else that came with it. The very same women who laughed off Karoline Leavitt as nothing more than a nuisance were now quite literally pleading for her to let it go. But let's not get it twisted, this wasn't some heartwarming call for unity, this was survival mode. Behind closed doors, ABC's legal team had already spelled it out in no uncertain terms. If Karoline pushed forward, things were going to get ugly. Every offhand comment, every internal email, every shady production decision could be forced into the spotlight, and the network's carefully curated image, it could unravel in front of the entire country. This public plea wasn't about compassion, it was about control. It was about preserving careers that had been built over decades, careers now hanging by a thread. The View wasn't trying to make peace, they were trying to stop the bleeding before it got worse. And the internet, it saw right through it. The moment ABC aired the segment, social media exploded. Audiences who had watched weeks of arrogant mockery were now watching the same faces try to hit reverse, and the backlash was instant. Comment sections turned into war zones. Screenshots of Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny's awkward shift in tone spread like wildfire across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Viewers were not buying the sudden change of heart, and the mood was ruthless. One comment on The View's Instagram post summed up the vibe perfectly. "If you weren't guilty, you wouldn't be begging." Others called the segment pathetic, scripted, and the most embarrassing damage control in TV history. And then came the memes. Within hours, the internet was flooded with brutal edits. One viral meme showed a split screen of Whoopi Goldberg, on one side, laughing and rolling her eyes, on the other, looking stressed and defeated during the plea. Another featured Joy Behar's panicked face with a sarcastic caption that read, "Built the show, built the problem." Like conservative media wasted zero time jumping in. Fox News aired back-to-back segments analyzing the collapse of The View's tough girl persona. The Daily Wire dropped a scathing piece accusing the hosts of pure hypocrisy, claiming their sudden call for common ground was nothing but a strategic play to dodge accountability. Even independent commentators on YouTube and TikTok dissected the meltdown frame by frame, racking up millions of views with titles like "Whoopi cracks under pressure" and Joy Behar's backpedal of the century. What was supposed to be a heartfelt olive branch quickly turned into a public relations disaster. Instead of earning sympathy, the hosts gave their critics exactly what they wanted, proof that The View was cracking under the weight of its own arrogance. Independent creators across YouTube didn't hold back either. Countless commentary channels chimed in, picking apart the host's sudden tone shift and calling it exactly what it looked like: damage control. Clips of the apology were spliced, slowed down, and analyzed frame by frame, with creators pointing out how every word, every sigh, and every carefully rehearsed line felt less like remorse and more like panic. Nobody was fooled. By the time The View's public apology aired, the damage had already been done. The audience had turned, the internet had spoken, and Karoline Leavitt, she wasn't showing any signs of backing off. ABC's top brass realized too late that this wasn't just about bad PR, it was a full-scale reputation crisis. Ratings were tanking, sponsors were pulling back, and whispers from advertisers suggested some were already looking to cut ties completely. ABC was now in full-blown meltdown mode. Internally, chaos was brewing. Executive meetings stretched into the night. Crisis teams were brought in. Lawyers were reviewing every second of footage. And while the hosts were still smiling on camera, the truth behind the scenes was much darker. ABC feared that if Karoline's lawsuit made it all the way to trial, the skeletons in their closet wouldn't just come out, they'd be broadcast. Private emails, confidential production notes, off-air commentary. If that all got dragged into the courtroom, it wouldn't just burn the View, it could torch the network's credibility for good. Despite the public pleas, the awkward reversals, and the legal posturing, Karoline made one thing crystal clear. She wasn't budging. Every time the hosts tried to soften their stance or shift the blame, it only made them look more guilty, more desperate, and more exposed. The power dynamic had flipped. The once untouchable hosts were now on the defensive, scrambling to salvage what was left. And if you think this is where it ends, think again. The storm has only just started. This might be the View's biggest scandal ever, and it's far from over. What happens next could change everything about how daytime TV handles accountability, legal battles, and public image. So what do you think? Is Karoline Leavitt really about to take down one of the most iconic shows on daytime television? Or will ABC pull off the ultimate save? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear all of it. And if you're as hooked as we are, make sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest tea. This story is far from done, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. See ya in the next one.